Most coaches believe they struggle on sales calls because they don't know what to say. And while it is true to an extent, that's actually not the core issue. The real issue is they don't understand what's happening psychologically inside the conversation with the prospect. So they talk too early, put the coaching hat and try and solve all the problems on the spot, miss key emotional moments that would have pushed the sale forward, and then get super frustrated at the end when the prospect hesitates about price or gives you every objection under the sun to get off the phone. In this video, I'm going to show you a real roleplay call with one of my clients, Nick, and I'm going to break down what he did well, where he lost control of the conversation, and what separates coaches who are stuck from 10K, 15K, heck, even 20K a month from the ones who build predictable and scalable client acquisition. Because the truth is, sales isn't persuasion. It's about psychological clarity of where the person is and help them understand that where they are isn't where they should be, showing them a clear, simple, and understandable way to help them get them to their desired outcome or where they want to be. And if we haven't met yet, my name is JP, founder of the Revive and Thrive Operator Advisory, and I help coaches who are stuck from anywhere between 5 to 8K, even 10K a month, break past those plateaus and start scaling from anywhere from 20 to 30K a month plus. I've helped upwards of 20 coaches grow their business, but more specifically helped 5 coaches scale past 20K a month and another 3 get to $10,000 to $15,000 a month. So if that's something you're potentially interested in, you're always open to send me a DM on Instagram. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. The way it's going to run is I'm going to let the Fathom recording run at the specific coaching points that I want to emphasize throughout it, but I'm also going to give my 2 cents on them and reinforce the teaching point too. What you're about to see isn't just a sales call breakdown. It's a legitimate call role play that I was doing with one of my clients. And in this role play, we broke down so many things that a lot of fitness coaches struggle with, like I mentioned. First being cognitive behavior. Second, emotional pacing. Third, conversation architecture and structure. 4, how to actually build trust with the prospect. 5, the friction that the prospect feels in their identity. And 6 is that emotional pain becomes more real through external relationships. The 7th teaching point is about clarification before expansion, so contextualizing pain before expanding pain. And finally, the last teaching point of the video is about learning how to mirror the reality of the prospect situation back to them in a way that actually benefits them, gets them uncomfortable, but in an accurate way. So without further ado, let's get into the first teaching point, and that is that overly casual openings completely destroy authority. One of the biggest misconceptions that I see in sales training, sales courses, and even if you haven't taken those things, is that you have to set either an overly alpha male frame or you have to set an overly loose frame. Whereas what I believe is you have to set a good middle. Because if you set too much of an alpha frame, something along the lines of, and I'm sure a lot of you fitness coaches who've been through mentorships, but even in general in organic content, tell you to open your calls with a super hard frame. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk through your goals, your struggles, and why you're even on the phone in the first place. And if it makes sense and you're a good fit for our program, I'll go and show you how it works. And by the end of the call, I wanna make sure that we get a decision on whether it's a yes or a no, and then we'll see if we'll move forward from there. How does that sound? That's an example of a hard frame that I don't typically like. Or you could open with too casual of a frame where you don't even take control of the conversation at all or position yourself as the authority. So the way that I like to, but also teach the boys to do so, is have a healthy middle and in between. Now, the way I teach the boys and the way that I do it is much more subtle, but I'll go and tell you that in just a moment after I finish the teaching points. So that way you can understand why we do it the way we do. But the issue is when you don't set a frame at all, the prospect can subconsciously feel like the conversation is too casual and doesn't put yourself in the driver's seat to actually control the conversation to go down the way you actually want it to, which is super important in the sales conversation. Because when you don't do this, to the prospect, it can feel just too much like a casual conversation, not a structured process, nor a structured conversation to actually help them get them to where they want to be. And when a conversation lacks perceived structure, your authority drops. You can't actually lead them properly. You're not able to guide them in the right direction to where they want to be. And then later in the call, when you try and regain control, it feels way too forced and it doesn't really match the vibe of the conversation. It also feels too obvious in the prospect's mind, which increases sales resistance, which is what we actually want to do the opposite of throughout the entirety of your sales process completely. What I want you guys to understand though is that you can be relaxed, you can be calm, you can be confident in it, but you can't be directionless and you can't not take control of the conversation. Because the first 5 minutes of the call establish who is leading the conversation, how serious the process is, but also the perceived value of yourself, but even the service that you're providing to them. And now I'm gonna go ahead and actually explain the way that I teach the boys how to actually open their calls, so that way they can gain authority, they can take control of the conversation and improve their perceived value, all while lowering sales resistance. And the opening that we choose with the boys is, I really appreciate you jumping on the phone with me today. It's awesome that I'm gonna get to know you today. Genuinely out of curiosity, what made you book the call with me today? Now, at face value, not many people understand this as an authority frame. However, it's probably one of the strongest ways I've ever gone about it throughout my sales process. 1, it doesn't sound like you're trying to qualify them. 2, it doesn't increase sales resistance from the start of the conversation, which you'll have to break down later. It allows you to take control of the conversation, but also put you in the position of authority in the conversation because 1, it comes across in a more genuine way. 2, by asking them what actually made them come to the phone to speak to you, psychologically puts you in the driving seat and in the position of authority without increasing sales resistance. And straight away, it gets them to tell them the exact reason why they potentially wanted to work with you or book the call with you in the first place. Another caveat to this as well is that most coaches, specifically in fitness, think that they need to be speaking majority of the time to be perceived as that level of authority to the prospect on the other side of the phone. Whereas the person actually in control of the conversation is barely speaking at all and is just asking questions based on the information that the prospect is giving to them. I hope that makes sense. And we'll go see how that was translated in the actual role play. So this way you can see and understand it in a bit more detail.
I'll kick off. How you doing, bro? How's your day been?
Good, man. Yeah, can't complain. Been pretty busy, but yeah, loving it. How about you?
Very, very good. I also had a pretty busy day. I just got back from the gym, planning on going out this afternoon. So just kind of cleaning up some back end stuff and excited to jump on the call today.
Awesome. What are you doing afterwards?
Heading out for a baseball game with the missus and a couple buddies. So got a dinner planned. Just gonna kind of kick back. What about yourself? Got any big plans tonight?
Nothing crazy, man. Literally just got some work to do. But baseball's pretty cool.
Yeah. Baseball. I've not been, only been to a couple games, but I definitely enjoy it. So it's a long one. Won't be getting back till late tonight. But you said you're finishing work up today. What do you do for work?
I'm in tech sales.
Ooh, internet, I think.
Oh, sorry, man. No, I'm in tech sales.
Tech sales.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
I've just got to like consolidate all my leads for the week ahead and make sure we're organized.
Nice. And you said you've been quite busy, so it's been doing well?
Yeah, man. I'm grateful for that. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Has it taken up a lot of your time, whether it's, interrupting personal life or anything?
Good. But from there, you want to take control of the conversation because it's been too casual up until this point. Like up until that point, it was fine. But just going straight into that can sound a bit assumptive. Okay. So what you want to do is no problem. Awesome, man. Glad to hear. Well, tell me if you go back to the do you have the framework up, the sales process up?
No, I'm going wrong.
Get it up. No, get up the sales process. So tell me what actually made you want to book the call today.
Of course.
The second core teaching point is that leading questions kill an honest discovery. I feel I did a pretty good job of explaining what a leading question is in the actual roleplay to my client Nick, so I'm not going to go and re-explain it now. But the reason why leading questions kill an honest discovery is because in the prospect's mind, you're asking a question with the expectation of getting the answer that you want out of them based on your lived experience or your core inherent beliefs, which immediately shifts their psychology from genuinely exploring this person's situation and what they believe at the time to, and how do I get them to say the right things to sell them and make money? Now, I'm not saying that you can't challenge beliefs in the prospect's mind and that you can't help them try and buy into a new way of thinking, but the way you go about it is super, super important. Because if you go and ask too many leading questions, they stop being honest with you and they start being agreeable to the line of thinking that you're actually trying to put them down. And this is where it tithers on the line of unethical. When you start getting good at sales and you start understanding how you can influence behavior, you understand that you can question someone and put them down a line of thinking that gets them to change to doing whatever you really want them to do. And this is really important when you start improving your sales initially, that you learn how to distinguish between the two. The way to change this is to ask an open-ended question to the prospect where they could answer in the way that you want them to answer, or they could answer it in another way. But you're essentially leaving it to the prospect to the conclusion by themselves instead of forcing them or persuading them by asking questions in a specific way that gets them to become more agreeable to the process. Like I said, neutral, open questions are the most important. You create psychological safety, whereas when you ask leading questions, you create psychological compliance. And compliance doesn't necessarily equal commitment. even if they end up buying on the phone that day. This is why many coaches think they have great calls, but then right after they pay and right after they get off the phone, they ask for a refund straight away. They were never actually emotionally nor logically invested into the actual change. They were just cooperative and felt manipulated by the line of questioning that you're actually putting them down on the phone. I'll let you guys go and have a look at the teaching point that I actually made.
I would say how he was, I guess, initially at his journey, like seeing him obviously like not as overweight, more overweight, really had no directional purpose in his life really. And seeing him actually be able to integrate better habits and all that into his life to get him to where he was and where he is now, it's like it's pretty insane. So I would say, yeah, specifically around that starting point probably resonates a bit more.
Right. So you're saying that you've struggled with direction and purpose as well, perhaps coming out of high school? Similar to Begsy? No?
I haven't said that just yet. So it's not that he said what he said was bad, it's the way you have to say it. So it's like, yeah. So you would recap what I said. So it seems like obviously Begsy, the things about Begsy's story was how he was prior that relates with you, but also just to see him go through it and build these good habits is really like insightful to see, which is awesome to hear. But if you don't mind me asking, Begsy initially, probably as you know, given you've seen it, was struggling with high school, so blah 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 blah, whatever you just said. Would you say that's similar to the case? Like, would you say you say this, you feel the same way instead of saying, you know what I mean, not as harsh?
Yeah.
Because when you say it that way, it comes across. One, it was an assumption because I hadn't actually brought that up directly based on what I said, and two, it just doesn't come across as collaborative. It's kind of like, I'm trying to find the pain point. Let's go.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
I definitely just repeating, slow down.
Pretty much that. And then also, trying to use my own words and try not to. So what it's actually called, it's called a leading question. So it's actually a big thing in the courtroom and in law. But if you hear the say for example that the attack, I don't even know what it's called, the defense and the say if the I don't even know, like, yes. Anyway,
it doesn't.
Say for example the defense is giving prosecutor. There you go. If the defense is giving an argument and they're trying to talk to someone on the stand and they're asking them questions, what you actually need to do as a lawyer is try and get them to answer the questions that you want to hear out of the person to make your case, which is sort of similar to how you do it in sales. However, though, there's a thing specifically in law, but also in sales, and it applies both ways, is you don't want to ask what's called a leading question, which essentially means you're asking the question and the way you're asking it, is with the intention that you're trying to get a specific answer out of them based on what you think and what you want out of the person, which is actually a full-blown assumption. And if you don't, if you don't frame it correctly and you continue that line of questioning in the way that you do, it can force them to believe something that they don't actually believe is true, which actually ends up being more unethical for the person, because they end up selling because you're forcing a belief onto them versus them coming to the belief themselves and them coming, you know what I'm saying? So that's why that's where the open-endedness and the collaborative nature of the question, even though at the same time, yes, we're trying to dig and we're trying to find an understanding around a pain point that we want to explore from the person. It's not like, this is the pain point I needed to hear, I'm going to ask this question directly to get that answer.
The third thing, and it's something that a lot of people who are helping their clients with sales, whether they are doing a direct sales mentorship or whether it's something else like what I'm doing for myself, it's just an overall consulting service. They don't actually teach people how to genuinely build rapport with a prospect and go really, really deep. This is where repetition becomes emotional regulation. A lot of people think it's unnatural to repeat back what the actual prospect is saying to them in their own words. And when you do it too much and too often, yes, absolutely, it can get that way. However, if you do it in the right way and at the right times, it doesn't just become a filler tactic, it actually becomes emotional regulation and builds a much deeper connection with you and the prospect, because they actually genuinely feel heard for what they're actually saying. When a prospect hears their own thoughts reflected back to them accurately, their nervous system will settle, but they'll feel more inclined to continue opening up to you throughout the process, which makes your job easier because you'll have the full context of how you can genuinely help them get across the phone. Whereas if you start the call, like we said earlier, with a really hard frame, and we don't build that psychological safety with the prospects throughout the call, they're not going to be able to open up to you as fast, nor as much as they would from the beginning, or even later on in the call. So we need prospects to feel heard, understood, less defensive, and then leading them to be more open throughout the whole process in itself. Because most people have their guard up from the beginning of the call anyway. They're skeptical. It's the first time you've ever met them. They may have internal conflict of even asking for help and getting on the phone call in the first place. And they can come to the call super guarded and with the intention of just to explore and understand what everything's all about. If you skip this emotional regulation and you don't genuinely build rapport with the prospect, you're going to be pitching into resistance. Coaches who are good at sales, but even sales reps in themselves, understand this and understand how to build a deep, genuine connection, but also build rapport with the prospects. So this way they're more bought into the process, but able to understand their situation fully. So it actually makes helping the prospect on the other side of the phone much easier, and honestly lead them, if they do end up signing up, into a really emotionally bought-in client, and honestly a great quality client. If you're enjoying everything so far and you're a fitness coach doing anywhere from 5 to 10K a month and don't know how to actually scale past that, you're always open to DM me on Instagram and I can see how I can potentially help.
Let's run it back. You saw Begsy.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's pretty awesome to hear, bro, that you saw Begsy in his transformation. Wait.
You asked me what resonated about it the most, and then I was like, just seeing Begsy's transformation, this and that, and then I was like, seeing how he was at the beginning, and then you asked about you asked the direct question, pretty much the last answer I gave was I resonate with Begsy's transformation as he was at the beginning, and it's awesome to see that he built good habits, along his journey.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good to hear, and I actually appreciate you saying that. So, was it right? So, oh man, I don't know why it's so hard after the disconnected conversation in my brain. I'm just going to repeat pretty much exactly what you said, and then we're going to roll. So I'm just going to practice that. So you said you resonated with the beginning stages of Begsy's journey where he was struggling with direction and purpose just outside high school. If it's all right with you, how do I apply that? Is it right with you if I asked you?
If you don't mind me asking.
If you don't mind me asking, is that similar to how you felt out of high school? If you don't mind
you
me
need
asking.
it in this context. You need to bring up the context of what he was feeling. However, you can also even make it more open-ended and then dive deeper. It's like, so you said you felt like you resonated with Begsy at the beginning of his transformation. When you say that, what about Begsy's transformation at the beginning was it that resonated with you? Then he says it himself, and then you can go deeper.
Yeah,
and then he'll say it.
Yeah. Just that bridge right now is like my brain is not wanting to articulate that. So.
So what about pretty much the question is, what about Begsy's journey at the beginning, like specifically, was it that actually resonated with you?
Yeah. Okay. So what about Begsy's journey at the beginning you said that really resonated with you?
Well, I'd say specifically around what he was mentioning with the lack of purpose and I guess the lack of good habits post high school.
But let's get back to the video of the fourth teaching point of the roleplay, which was solving problems too early and keeping your coaching hat on reduces the perceived need but also perceived value of your service. I know this for a fact, but most coaches, especially fitness coaches, love showing their competence and love expressing the knowledge that they have because one, they are so passionate about what they do and they really, really love it, but it also could be potentially fueled from a side of ego too. But the issue is showing that you're competent and you know your stuff isn't the only thing that actually gets someone across the line. Because if you show your competence too early and you're trying to solve their problems or give advice too early, it actually creates premature relief to their problems. And when you give premature relief, it slowly starts to reduce urgency. Now, I'm not saying to give free value. I'm not saying to give value to your prospects, to your clients, to whoever it may be, but you have to be selective and you have to know how to do it in the right way. So that way you don't kill urgency throughout the sale. Because if someone feels like this is solvable on their own, if they go and try and implement it, before they feel they can't continue doing things the way they're doing them, they will delay the decision to move forward. The psychology of this is pretty simple. Decision psychology, pain must become undeniable before the solution becomes valuable. You can't sell anything to anyone if there's no inherent problem that's affecting them at this current point in time. But the nuance to this is that we need current pain in their current situation. Not future pain, not past pain, but current pain and how it affects them now in their day-to-day. When coaches solve things too early, they interrupt the emotional arc that is necessary for a prospect to go through in order to actually make an informed buying decision and want to move forward on the spot. And when they interrupt, they later struggle to create proper emotional buy-in and urgency for them to make a change. And most coaches don't understand this and then default to saying that it's the lead's fault, it's a lead issue, my leads suck, or maybe my price is too high. Whereas that's just not the case at all. You'll see how I explain it in the call with Nick.
Because as I'm reading that, it's not something that I would say. So I just think as I'm breaking it up, I'm starting to learn that now. Because again, I've never really used this properly, like I said to you. But now that I am trying to, it's just not feeling as clear. Because where I'm going wrong in my sales, like we talked about last time, is I'm just trying to problem solve too quickly and giving them the solutions now. And that's not getting me anywhere near as far as I can go with them opening up due to my own genuinity. And it's like, not good. So I feel like I need to just pull that aside. So if I'm to just run that back.
It's not necessarily that it's not necessarily that it's not good. I would just want to reframe that. It's more that you're actually doing them more of a disservice by not understanding them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
The fifth teaching point of this call is that we need to stop talking and thinking about the logistics of fitness and talk more about the identity that the prospects want to step into as a result of using fitness as the tool to get there. Because deep down, most prospects, in theory, yes, on paper, want to lose weight, wants to build muscle, X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. But what they actually want as a result of the muscle that's built, X, Y, and Z, is someone who is more confident on the day-to-day, someone who knows they actually stick to their word and follow through with what they say, the ability to be able to play with their kids and not feel gassed out, and ultimately just the next step in their self-improvement journey, for example. But the issue is too many coaches overlook and don't actually listen out for these emotional and identity trigger words that the prospect is actually saying back to them. And when we miss these things, you actually reduce your offer to only selling the logistics, which completely caps your perceived value, caps how much you can even charge, and will always keep you stuck as a general fitness coach who sells programs and helps people lose weight and build muscle, which ultimately I know is not what you want. When you're able to learn how to probe and hear these identity but also emotional cues from the prospect, you're already one step up every other coach because you're already perceiving yourself as that person to help them actually step into this new identity versus just selling training, nutrition, and accountability. You'll see what I mean now.
Yeah, I would, to be honest. I mean, despite me being in, a solid job, I do feel, a bit lost at times, for sure. Yeah.
Has there been a recent moment in time where that's hit you?
To be honest, yeah. Like, obviously, as you know, I'm in tech sales and doing quite well, which I'm obviously really appreciative of. But I don't know if you've ever gotten to a point where it's like you've achieved all the goals that you've ever wanted to achieve, and then you're kind of like, what's next? And you're kind of left, feeling empty. So, last couple of weeks, or actually 2 weeks ago to this date, to be exact, I literally hit like my record day in sales.
All right, congrats.
Thanks, man.
Don't cut him off.
No, don't cut him off and don't gas him up because it's actually a sad thing. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
Fuck.
That's okay. Back on. We're good. And I just remember sitting there, and I'm not even joking, like, obviously I got a good dopamine rush for probably a good 30 minutes to an hour, but then afterwards I was just like, oh, I've got to do more now. And then that made me really reflect and be like, what am I even doing this for?
The sixth teaching point from this specific roleplay is that a way to expand the emotional pain that gets them to understand that this is an issue right now, not an issue that was in the past or an issue that could come up, is by probing and understand how it affects not just themselves, but other people in their lives. Because pain becomes more actionable when it affects people around them, especially their loved ones. Self-pain can be tolerated because they're taking their own responsibility, but when it extends to people outside of themselves, it becomes very hard to tolerate that. So essentially, self-pain can be tolerated, but relational pain can't be. When a prospect realizes that my current situation, the way I behave, the way I do things at the moment, affects my partner, my family, my work colleagues, for example, as well, the motivation shifts from self-improvement to responsibility that they need in order to actually change not just for themselves, but for them too. This is where you can build more urgency to help them understand that they need to change now, and is a critical turning point for any serious sales conversation.
I mean, not even this morning, but I still live with my parents, and they've been pushing me to get a job for a long time, and I've always brushed them off, right? Like, just like, well, whatever. Like, I'll get one eventually, but I guess this week actually made me realize that probably needed to do something about it. Mum was hassling me all week. It's probably the worst argument we'd had about everything, and I just, it was the first time I guess I really opened my eyes and see how much it was impacting them.
Wow, bro, I really appreciate you telling me that. So just from this morning you had an epiphany, still living with your parents, and they've been wanting you to get a job recently. And this week specifically, you had a realization moment when you had a big argument with your mum, and you saw the impact that it had on her. See, what's hard, pausing quick, is I'm yet to have one of these moments on a video call, and then to quickly structure that
where it's like really deep.
The seventh teaching point in this roleplay is that we need to contextualize/clarify the pain before expanding it and before probing any further. Now, don't get me wrong, building and getting them to understand their emotional pain is super, super important. But if you do this without any proper contextualization or clarification, it just doesn't land properly and it doesn't make sense to the prospect. For example, you'll see in the actual roleplay why this didn't make sense for Nick when he was trying to do it himself. But the example that we actually gave, and you'll see it, is that I, playing the prospect, said that I lacked purpose, but I never defined what that purpose was to me. And if I wasn't able to do that, then any question like, how does this affect your day-to-day? How does this affect people around you? Or just where we go and actually expand this emotional pain doesn't hit as hard or doesn't even really make sense because it's more conceptual. Essentially, you have to understand in this scenario and in any scenario that seems ambiguous, what that thing actually means to them. So that way the pain point becomes more visceral and becomes more real to the person in their mind. But even for you, gives you a level of clarification that actually gets them to understand them better. You'll go and see how I explained it with Nick in the call now.
Pretty much you'd be like, so you say you felt like you had this lack of purpose, and afterwards, when you did hit the, the number that you hit, right, or the best sales day that you had, you felt good for 30 minutes to an hour, and then afterwards you didn't really feel much and you had this lack of purpose. When you mean a lack of purpose and, kind of feeling like, what are you even doing this all for in the first place? Like, what do you actually mean by purpose? Because purpose to one person looks different to another.
Great question. What is his purpose? That's what you were trying to get me to say.
It's kind of like, what does purpose mean to you?
Yeah.
What does that look like to you?
It's such a fucking huge question. Like, it's huge. All right.
Like, is it having something to do every day? Is it this? Is it that?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And then you can flip it back on his head afterwards and be like, oh, so you wouldn't say you have those things at the moment. Okay. How would you say not having the lack of purpose in your life is actually affecting your day to day? Does that make sense? Because, so it's kind of like you identify a pain point. I think I'm not too sure if I got you to write this down as well in your notes. It's like you clarify the pain point, then you expand on the pain point to get context, and then you kind of
and then you find the frame I've got there.
So we also, for this context as well, it's like when you ask the how is it affecting, this is just specific for the how is it affecting your day to day. afterwards, after you get the pain point, you need to contextualize the pain point, which is kind of what we're doing already, if you can see from the layering of the questions, right? However, because there was something unclear in that specific scenario, and if something is unclear, you need to get clarity on that for the context, and then you can then hit the how does it affect the day-to-day, because it's like, for example, how does purpose impact your day-to-day? That doesn't even make sense.
No, I truly wouldn't know how to answer that.
Now, the eighth and the last teaching point of the roleplay is mirroring the reality of the prospect situation accurately to them versus pressuring them. Reality mirroring is often mistaken for confrontation. It can come across confrontational, but if you do it in the right way, it's actually an accurate reflection on the prospect situation to them that they wouldn't have understand or even told themselves otherwise. Because humans minimize discomfort to maintain psychological stability with themselves. So they rationalize things, they make out things to themselves to be better than they actually are, so they can actually feel better about themselves and about the situation. Our role moving forward is to make sure we can accurately reflect the prospect situation back to them in their own words, to get them to understand that their situation at the moment isn't as good as it seems. When this is done correctly, it doesn't create defensiveness, it creates recognition, and recognition creates emotional movement, and movement creates decision readiness to actually make a change in their life for the better.
I mean, how does it make you feel to know that, since high school, which was 7 years ago, that you haven't been as motivated, you're lazy, you're having these arguments with your parents, and they're forcing you to, they're wanting you to get a job, they're trying to do your best to push you, but you're not really doing anything about it.
Well done. Yeah.
The biggest thing is, once you have the pain points, the way to cook them, and I'm not even saying it as way to manipulate them. You're trying to actually show them the reality of their situation. You're trying to show them the reality of their situation in their own words and how it actually seems to them. Because humans, this is last big teaching point, humans rationalize things to themselves to make things seem less worse than they actually are.
100%.
So at face value, you and I know that if someone's lazy, unmotivated, and hasn't literally been unemployed for 7 years since high school, that's not a good thing at all. Nice. Right? But in his mind, he's only just realized that recently, with his parents, but he's also still that underlying justification of his position of where he actually is, because he doesn't want to actually accept the reality that he's not where he should be. So we actually have to accurately show that to him. And the way you do that is by summarizing it in that way. It can come across a bit harsh, but you're actually doing it for the benefit of the person.
For sure.
Yeah.
Guys, I hope that was valuable. I really, really appreciate if you've made it this far. If this sparked any curiosity about how you could potentially improve your own sales, your sales process, or get you past this plateau at 5 to 10K a month so you can hit that 20K, 30K month that you've ultimately always been wanting to. But alongside this, if you're just sick and tired of not running your fitness coaching offer like an actual business, DM me the word scale on Instagram and I'll go and reach out with some more info on how you could potentially do that. Regardless of that, guys, I really appreciate you all. If you made it this far, it genuinely means the world. Life has just been absolutely nuts recently and things have been absolutely hectic, but I'm still doing my best to try and deliver as much value to you guys as possible so you guys can go and improve your businesses too. I really appreciate you all. If you found it insightful, potentially subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.